I just can't stop thinking about waffles. And why can't I just stop dreaming about waffles? I just can't stop thinking about waffles.
That poor little girl. I really do understand how she feels. She just found something amazing and she wants to have it all the time and she can't. And that's a bitter pill to swallow for a little kid. Actually, I've been quoting this one at my wife so much since I got back from Japan. Just like this adorable little girl, I found something that I love, that I wish I could just have all the time, and I can't stop thinking about it. Why can't I stop dreaming about Japan? I flew into Haneda Airport in Tokyo, and I arrived there about 4 a.m., which made me feel really stupid because I specifically booked the right-hand window seat so I could see Mount Fuji when I flew in. I have a doctorate and I miss stuff like this. My flight was 12 hours long, and with getting off the plane, getting my luggage, getting through security, it was probably another 2 hours. Plus I was due to arrive in Kyoto that night. So I had to make my way from Tokyo to Kyoto that day. And I'm gonna blame the lack of sleep on this one. I did not need to rush, but I really felt like I needed to rush. When I got there, I was super tired. I was very hangry. Tokyo Station is incredibly large. I am from a small town and this is very intimidating for me. It's this huge brick building, and inside it just feels like it's miles and miles of corridors. And there are shops everywhere, but I couldn't tell what any of them were because my Japanese is so bad. And most of them didn't open until long after I was there. Remember, it was only like 7 a.m. when I was there. I couldn't tell which ones would sell me food and which ones would just sell me souvenirs. Since I was trying so hard to get to Kyoto, I was looking everywhere for a place to buy a train ticket. I didn't have any idea where I was going. I finally found the JR line, which I knew would get me a ticket for the Shinkansen or the bullet train. And there were machines on the wall, and lots of people were buying tickets from them. So I went up and I switched the language to English, and I bought a ticket to Kyoto. And then I tried to go through the security gate, and I had bought the wrong ticket. And this is when I realized that all my Japanese that I've been studying for the past 5 years was doing nothing for me. I don't have the ear for it, so I can put together a simple question. I can't listen for the answer. I don't understand anybody. Fortunately for me, Japanese school systems teach English from very young, elementary school. So everybody that I ran into had at least some rudimentary English and could point me to the next step of my journey. Still, I feel like I owe an apology to every single person I dealt with. It must have been very frustrating to deal with somebody like me. Part of the reason that my Japanese is so bad is that I didn't spend nearly enough time with the books that I should have. I studied grammar and I studied sentence structure and things like that, but I didn't study as much as I should have. I spent a whole lot of time watching anime, which are Japanese cartoons. It was way more fun than studying the book, but not nearly as effective. But since I spent so much time watching anime, I got fixated on weird little things in Japanese culture that other people might not. For example, I really wanted to see Mount Fuji from the window of the Shinkansen or the bullet train. Wish number one was granted. Another thing I definitely wanted to do was to visit Kyoto. Kyoto is a beautiful city with so much history. It used to be the capital of Japan before the Meiji Restoration. Its name means capital city. And then the capital was moved to Tokyo, which means Eastern capital. The center of my world was Kyoto Station, which is a combination station, of course, but also a mall and an eatery and a vantage point, and there was a concert space set up. The building itself is kind of a neo-art sculpture. My hotel was super close to it, and for the first day I felt like I couldn't get away from it. I felt kind of stuck there. It's because I was so intimidated, so I felt like I couldn't leave. And while that part of Kyoto is impressive, if you don't love shopping, you should move on to something else. I really did waste my whole first day in Kyoto just by staying so close to the station. But truth be told, I was very hungry and very tired, and I needed a nap and a good meal before I could enjoy anything at all. Here's a super cool thing about Japan though. If you have a hotel reservation anytime during that day, they're gonna accept your luggage. So I arrived in Kyoto about, maybe 10 a.m. and I dropped off my luggage, Staff over there are super friendly. So helpful. Once I dropped off my luggage, I stopped at a Lawson's. It's a convenience store over there, kind of like 7-Eleven here, except for convenience stores, including 7-Eleven in Japan, serve really good food. Lawson's became my best friend for snacks and water bottles the whole time I was in Japan. They're everywhere. So I stayed near the station and I found some things just in the neighborhood around there. Lovely little school. A shrine. I was too nervous to go into the shrine area because I didn't know any of the rules. Here's something I found really impressive. So everyone talks about the Shibuya Scramble Crossing like it's something amazing, just because 2,000 people will cross there every day in Tokyo. Later on in my trip, I found myself at that crossing while I was in Tokyo, and it was annoying. It's just a busy city intersection. There's no reason to find it impressive. And most of the people who are crossing have their phones out to record it. So I'm sure people just make a pilgrimage there and make it twice as busy as it should be. It wasn't for me. But this is impressive. This isn't even a super busy intersection. This is just a road near a school. Raised pedestrian bridges like this one and pedestrian tunnels under the road keep the soft, squishy pedestrians away from the unyielding metal of cars. How is this not more popular worldwide? America, we gotta step it up. Shopping in this part was pretty crazy. Lots of department stores. There were stores for tourists. There were stores for locals. It was intimidating, again. And they have arcades with the craziest games. This Pokemon game, you throw the balls at the screen to catch Pokemon. They're squishy foam balls, and you can just grab them. You don't have to put a coin in and have them roll down a chute. They trust their patrons way more than we are able to here in the United States. Right next to the station, you'll find the entrance to the subway, and there is a full-on shopping mall attached to that. Plus tons of restaurants in this area. Here's another neat thing about Japan. All the restaurants have menus, but then they also have pictures of the food or even plastic models set up in their windows. So here's my pro tip. Just take a picture of what you want and then show the picture on your phone to the waiter or waitress. Never have to worry about the vocabulary. I was in line at a creperie and the woman in front of me was from France and she was explaining in broken English her order of, I think it was 5 crepes. It was obvious they were having a hard time. When I got up there, I just said, "Kore kudasai," this please. The girl looked so relieved. I used that my whole trip. Kore kudasai. That worked so well. My hotel was Kyoto Tower Hotel Annex, and it was fine. It was a smaller room. I was barely ever in the room. But I could have gotten a much bigger room for only a few more yen, I'm sure. Everything was so cheap in Japan. The next day I knew I wanted to go to Fushimi Inari Shrine. I'm sure you've seen pictures of it on Instagram. It's famous the world over for its picturesque tunnel made out of 10,000 torii gates. I've seen it on tons of anime and 10,000 Instagram posts. The main buildings are all huge and ornate and stunning, and I have no idea what any of them are. They have places to buy and hang Emma tablets. Emma tablets are prayer tablets. You can buy omamori blessing charms, you can buy omikuji fortune slips, you can buy goshuin shrine stamps. In case you're like me and you don't know that much about non-Christian religions, the torii gate is an important symbol of the Shinto religion. Each of these was donated by individuals or businesses over the years in supplication or in gratitude. Fushimi is the name of the mountain, and Inari is the name of the kami or the god that lives on the mountain. His domain is agriculture and rice and business. The white fox or the kitsune is portrayed everywhere, and he's something like a messenger to the god Inari. The red bib is a representation of his power, and he's often shown with something in his mouth like a jewel of jade or a key or a scroll or sacred rice stalks. The Senbon Torii, or the main tunnel of torii gates, only extends partway up the mountain, but there are torii gates all the way up the mountain. But there are not tourists all the way up the mountain. Those thin out drastically once you get past the main tunnel. The place is packed cheek to jowl up to that point, but after that, I was basically alone. And there are later portions of the trail that have the torii gate tunnel later on. So if you're looking for that perfect picture, just keep hiking. You'll get out of that kettle of fish at the bottom. You'll have plenty of space for that perfect picture. There are multiple little shrines up on that trail, especially offshoots. And the best decision I made was to follow every path I found. You'd be amazed at how unpopular that choice was. I was almost completely alone every time I chose to take a side path. There were so many tiny shrines which felt like family markers. Further internet research showed me that these are not gravestones like I originally thought. They're tiny shrines set up by families for private worship. This footpath took me only 100 yards off the main trail, but I found this beautiful little shrine next to a hidden bamboo thicket. Another thing I became obsessed with was seeing sakura petals or cherry blossom petals falling, so I felt really blessed to see this in real life at this out-of-the-way shrine. With the payout of that experiment fresh in my mind, I took every side path I could and followed it all the way to the end. These small red torii gate markers can be purchased at the shops below. They're a little expensive. They're much like the Emma tablets. You write your prayer on them and you leave them there as a way to communicate with the kami. Like I said, I'm not a practitioner of the Shinto faith, so I'm just extrapolating what I learned from anime here. Anytime there was a significant collection of small shrines, there was also a shop on the other side of the trail from it. I stopped at every single one of them. I bought way more than I usually would. I'm usually really cheap. Near the top of the mountain, there's an overlook with a beautiful view of all of Kyoto. And then there's also two little restaurants right there. One's an ice cream shop and the other's a sushi restaurant. I had a small vanilla and soy flour ice cream. First time I've ever had that. It was pretty good. I would definitely go back for it. If you go to the Fushimi Inari shrine, I think a lot of people get through some of the torii gates and then they go home. There's a lot to explore here. It's a beautiful nature area. There are signs around saying watch out for wild boars, and they say don't get too close to the monkeys because they are mean. There are so many little offshoots to the main trail. I'm on one now that says this is not the exit. This is a circular trail, and I said cool, and everybody else turned away. It is important to note that this is a sacred site for a lot of people. I have seen several people who are praying in earnest here. I know for us tourists, it's not something we really understand. We might toss a coin in and bow and ring the bell. But for some people, this is a very sacred site. If you do travel to a place like this, be sure you respect it. And there are plenty of vending machines along the way for buying sodas and sports drinks and teas. I highly recommend one called Pocari Sweat. It was delicious. It was what all sports drinks aspire to be. Back down to the main shrine, I pulled my omikuji, or the fortune slip. It costs about 100 yen. It's fun. If you get a good fortune, you take it home. You take the luck with you. If you pull a bad fortune, you can get rid of the bad luck by folding it into a long strip and then tying that strip onto kind of a little fence that they have. Anyway, a designated place for getting rid of your bad omikuji. It's important to note that Google Translate does not do a good job on omikuji. I wanted to try all the foods that I saw in anime. Lucky for me, every time there's a tourist stop, there are lots of little carts or shops at the base of it. So right out in front of Fushimi Inari, I tried everything. Everything was delicious. Lots of foods over there were served on sticks, and anytime something is served on a stick, you can just ask for ippon kudasai, 1 stick please. I am spending a fortune on snacks today. Totally worth it. So the next day, my wife, half a world away, told me I'd made a bad mistake. I hadn't switched over my watch to the date when I crossed the date line, so I thought I had 2 more days in Kyoto. I only had 1. I had to kick it into overdrive. I had so much that I wanted to do. I didn't get to do half of it. But the next day, I did everything. First, I went to Kinkaku-ji, which is the Temple of the Golden Pavilion. This is the most photogenic building I've ever seen. I don't think it's possible to take a bad photo of this building. So that you know what to expect, you pay admission and then you enter this long walking path. But it's not a free-for-all. It is one way and you don't turn around to go back. So whatever pictures you want to take, make sure you take them as you go because there's no going back unless you go out and then back in. The top 2 stories of this golden pavilion are literally covered in gold leaf. And that ornament on the top, that's the Phoenix of Legend. This golden pavilion houses relics that are important to the Buddhist temple on the grounds. And from what I've read, tourists never go in. And you're prevented from getting too close by a small fence. So I followed the path with all the other visitors around the lake and past beautiful flower gardens and beautiful trees and a waterfall. This little coin throwing game pops up again and again on the trail. I was very good at it. They say every time you're able to throw the coin into the dish, you get a wish granted. Wish I'd known that at the beginning. Could be a multi-millionaire. And this is where I really discovered goshuin. Goshuin are stamps from shrines and temples, and some elements of them are stamped in your book and the rest are hand-painted. Unfortunately, I can't read this calligraphy, but if you could, you'd see the name of the temple or the shrine, the date of your visit, and then there's a line on the side that means to worship respectfully, kind of, worship earnestly. They're painted in special books called goshuin-cho, which are holy. You can only use them for shrine stamps and temple stamps. No other stamps or stickers are allowed in these. If you put, say, a train stamp in them, you can be turned away from getting any more goshuin in your book. Goshuin were already on my radar from anime. I love Erika's expressions in this scene. I did purchase a goshuin from Fushimi Inari. They just handed me a loose leaf page that was pre-painted. Apparently they have too many people asking for them there, so they can't do them live. To get a goshuin, you take your goshuin-cho to the office where they paint the goshuin. Easiest way to find it is look for the kanji that looks like a capital EP. That's simplified, but it's true. Then you make a small donation for the goshuin. It's usually only a couple of dollars. And then they paint it for you right there. Or they give you a page that they pre-painted and you can glue it in your book later. I got into an argument online about this because one guy said that goshuin are only for people who practice the faith. But I went to lots of shrines and got lots of goshuin. Nobody ever asked me for a membership card. Nobody seemed offended. As a matter of fact, at one temple, I complimented the girl's technique. I said, "Kirei desu. That's so beautiful." She looked tickled with my praise. So I think as long as you're respectful, it's okay to do this. Goshuin are not available 24/7. So if you want one of these, you should show up during public hours, like before 5 maybe. Next, I went to Kiyomizu Dera, which is the temple of the pure water spring. It's a huge Buddhist temple halfway up Mount Ottawa. To get there, you climb this steep street and it's lined with shops of all kinds. And I went nuts on the food again. I ate everything. It's all delicious over there. I forgot to turn on my camera for this, but there is a takoyaki shop about a fourth of the way up, maybe on the left if you're headed up the mountain. Best thing I've ever put in my mouth. It was amazing. Crispy on the outside, creamy on the inside. Such good flavors. So if you go there, look for that. This temple is over 1,200 years old, but like so many buildings in Japan, it was lost to fire and rebuilt over and over again. The stage is over 4 stories tall, and impressively, it uses only traditional carpentry joints. There's not a single nail in the entire construction. Despite that, it survived countless earthquakes. It's still standing on 400-year-old beams, and it supports the thousands of tourists that come every single day. And although this is the most sacred and best well-known building here, there are 30 buildings on the grounds, including this pagoda across the valley, which has an impressive view of the main building and stage. This is the spring that gives the temple its name. The spring is divided into these 3 streams. One of them will grant you academic success, one will grant you longevity, and one will grant you love. The line was really long, so I didn't join. The grounds are beautiful, and it's a quick walk to that pagoda I showed you earlier. And of course, I had to have more snacks on the way out. I really like dango. I'm not really sure how you're supposed to eat at these places. Probably doing this wrong. But I just find like a street that has tons of shops and stalls. And I go hog wild, like, one of those please, one of those please, one of those please. It's amazing. It's so delicious. Next, I went to the Gion district. If you've ever seen pictures of Kyoto, guaranteed you've seen pictures from the Gion district. They are famous for geisha as well as this pagoda. This was another thing that I stumbled across by chance, and man, it was impressive when I first saw it. And then I recognized the street where everybody takes the picture of this pagoda. I didn't like this part. Everyone is standing around taking exactly the same photo, and so you just get all these other tourists in your photo. It's kind of crowded, kind of annoying. I wouldn't do this part again. Right next to where I took this picture, there's this little house that has all these sculptures of yokai or weird monsters. And it was so bizarre that I started taking pictures. And then I saw a sign both in English and Japanese that said, if you take these pictures, you owe me 100 yen for the copyright. There were instructions to put a 100 yen coin into the frog's mouth, which was another one of the sculptures. I went around the side and I dropped the coin in the frog's mouth and it made a big plinking noise. And the lady who lived in that house came out with a very intimidating look. And all my Japanese left me. And finally, I said, "Hyakuyen koko," which means 100 yen here. Her demeanor immediately changed. She smiled broadly, she bowed to me, she said thank you, and I was very relieved that she was no longer angry with me, and so I did the exact same thing. I won't show the pictures here. They are sculptures of monsters made up of body parts, and some are not family friendly. On the next street over, I found another beautiful Buddhist temple, but unfortunately I showed up too late, and I wasn't able to get a goshuin from there. The security guard informed me that the grounds were only going to be open for another 5 minutes. And so I said, thank you very much. And I made sure to get out of there in 3 minutes. So I only had time to take a few pictures and walk through one time. But I wish I had come during public hours. I think I'm right this time, I think this is actually a graveyard behind the temple. Some Japanese people will celebrate the beauty of spring with a party called hanami, which is flower viewing. They will go to a park with beautiful cherry blossoms, and they'll sit there and eat good food. Cherry blossom viewing was mostly over by the time I got to Kyoto, but I did stumble across this little park where people were still having a hanami party. And of course, I had to have more snacks. There's a stream littered with fallen cherry blossoms and huge fish. This fish must have been 2 feet long. I was still squeezing the last little bit of activity out of the day. And once again, I just stumbled across another Shinto shrine. Seriously, these beautiful buildings are everywhere in Japan. And after visiting just a few, it's really easy to tell the Shinto shrines from the Buddhist temples. This one was really easy because it's the same color and layout as Fushimi Inari. But the real giveaway is the torii gates. If you've got a torii gate, it's a Shinto shrine. To show respect, you pass through the side of the torii gate, not the middle. The middle is reserved for the kami. Also, when you pass through a torii gate, you should bow. And when you come back out, you turn around and bow again. I tried to be very formal when I did this to show respect for the people and the country that were hosting me, but I definitely saw some Japanese youngsters who just threw kind of a sideways nod over their shoulders as they passed. All this happened on my last full day in Kyoto, and I didn't want it to end, of course. The Fushimi Inari shrine is free to enter and it's open 24 hours. And since I didn't know anything else to do and that was my favorite thing to do all day, I went back. The mood had changed completely. Instead of being packed full of tourists, it was almost empty. I think I saw 5 other people there, including security guards. It was really spooky. Another thing in anime is they always have kind of a test of courage where you have to go on a hike in the dark, and this was my own personal test of courage. I spent about an hour there. I did not hike all the way to the top. The next day I had to catch a train to my next destination, but I didn't have to leave until noon, so I got up early and I shoved my luggage into a locker at the Kyoto train station. And there was another temple that I had heard offered a beautiful goshuin, and so I went looking for it. Sadly, it was not open by the time I was there and wouldn't open until after I had to leave for the train. But I found another huge Buddhist temple in the same neighborhood. These things are everywhere and they're gorgeous. I happen to be very close to the Arashiyama bamboo forest, so I decided to take a walk through it on my way to the nearest train station and get back to Kyoto Station. I actually heard from several sources that it's a real letdown because Instagrammers will use so many photo filters to make it look more vibrant. I thought it was beautiful, even with the natural color of the bamboo. Another criticism is you go, and what's there to do? You walk. Sounded like a good time to me. All told, I loved Kyoto. If I go back to Japan, when I go back to Japan with my wife, I'm definitely going back to Kyoto to see all the things I missed and revisit some of my favorites. Thanks for watching, everybody. Tune in next time. I'm going to visit a little town called Hamamatsu, and I almost don't make it to Tokyo.